Alex, what are you doing in this room? What are you doing in it?
Alright guys, welcome back to Days of Darkness and welcome to the DoD Pro Wrestling Special. That's right, man. You know, first of all, happy Thanksgiving to you all. If all things go according to plan, this should be up on Thursday. So to those who celebrate, happy Thanksgiving. But yeah, man, so worry not. This is still a horror channel, no matter the topic of conversation today. This is still going to be a horror channel no matter what. Always going to talk about spooky movies, do spooky content, all that stuff. I just almost knocked my script over. But yeah, man, that's not going to change. But every now and then, I like to kind of go outside of the box a little bit. And I like to talk about other parts of my life within the entertainment world that are important to me. And, you know, I've done an episode of the DoD podcast, rest in peace for now. But I did an episode of the DoD podcast on Star Wars, which I am fucking huge into. And yeah, I kind of realized I got some good reception from that episode. People really enjoyed it. And I realized, I'm like, okay, you know, eventually I have to tackle my other huge passion. You know, horror films to me, or just horror in general, is my number one form of entertainment. I've decided that pretty heavily within the last couple of years of my life, but there are other forms of entertainment that come very, 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 very close to equaling importance to me, and Star Wars is one of those things, and professional wrestling is another, dude. And I wanted to share that with you guys, you know? So, fuck, man, let's not bury the lead anymore. Let's just hop right into it with Chapter 1. Alright, so we get into the very beginning of the pro wrestling fandom for me. So, bear in mind, because I know members of my family are going to watch this and stuff like that too. Obviously, the chapter says it all, 2 years old, so I am aware that I might not have the most accurate memories and how they played out in my head. All I really have to go off of is what has been told to me by people, and very, very, very faint memories within my own brain. So, here's how it goes down, man. I'm 2 years old, waddling around, just kind of, you know, driving my mom nuts, doing what fucking 2-year-olds do. And I wander into whatever room that my two brothers were in. My brothers and my sister would come in and visit from their mom's house, and they would come over every other weekend. And yeah, man, we'd, you know, have a fucking good time. It was great. And, you know, I was just kind of walking around, and I saw them, and they were playing with action figures. I think around the time they must have been, I don't even want to guess how old they are, because the math will be totally off probably. But, you know, they were sitting down there playing with toys. And in my 2-year-old brain, I'm like, I like toys. So, you know, I'm going to fucking go over there and see what they're doing. And I was just kind of watching them. I was a shy kid, especially that young. So I didn't, you know, it's not like I dived in there and I was like, oh, I want in on this shit. But I was just kind of watching them. And I noticed it kind of stuck out to me how they were playing with the figures. They weren't just clacking them together like I would do. They weren't just fighting, you know. I was always used to watching Batman and different superhero cartoons and shit, and, you know, just kind of, you know, you're fighting. But the way they were maneuvering these action figures, and one would lift the other one up above their head, and they would slam them down, and my brothers would go, ah, and all this shit, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And, you know, at the time I didn't know, but they were playing with wrestling action figures, and they were, you know, mimicking moves and stuff like that. So they notice eventually that I'm pretty into just watching them do this. Like, I'm just kind of like, I'm not even trying to grab their toys or nothing like that. I'm just watching them, you know? And they kind of look at me and they're like, all right, well, they finish up their match or their show or whatever they were doing, because they, you know, you gotta finish. The show must go on, baby, no matter the audience. Fig Feds 101. But yeah, man, so they finish up, and then they notice that I was pretty into the shit, and they sit me down in front of a TV, and they pop in a VHS tape. And I couldn't tell you for the life of me what VHS tape it was. They had a bunch of old WWF and WCW VHS tapes they just had, you know. And they popped one in, and I remember watching this show, and it just fucking blew me away. And it was all downhill from there, man. I was fucking hooked. Like I said, I don't remember, like, I can't tell you the first match I ever saw. I can't tell you, like, if it was Survivor Series, whatever the fuck, or SummerSlam, WrestleMania. I couldn't fucking tell you because I don't know. I was 2 fucking years old. But there was one man that I distinctly remember seeing for the first time. I'm almost positive it was on that very first time watching professional wrestling. I watched a couple matches, whatever, and then I saw this man. You know, being a 2-year-old kid who was already pretty into dark material, mainly like Batman and stuff like that. I wasn't into horror movies or anything like that, but being into stuff like Batman and just darker material in general, you know, being exposed to different, like, heavy metal, thanks to my dad, and, you know, seeing, like, Kiss and stuff like that, and having Gene Simmons seeing him raised up into the rafters and spitting up all the blood and shit like that. You know, I look back at things like this in my life, and I'm like, yeah, no fucking wonder I love horror movies so much. It's just been ingrained in my fucking brain. But yeah, I was always in the darker material, even at that young of an age. And so, having already been mesmerized by the presentation of professional wrestling, right from the start, seeing this man, first of all, hearing that gong, and seeing The Undertaker for the first time, the big fucking dude, the trench coat, the long dark hair, the hat, the fucking gray gloves. I remember this was more than likely early 90s WWF, so this was pretty early Taker, so that description tracks, but still seeing that character for the first time and seeing him do his thing. I could not tell you who he wrestled or anything like that. I just do not fucking remember. I know Taker probably went over, though, because it was very rare for him to lose back then. But yeah, man, getting to see that character for the first time, I was just immediately like, that's my favorite fucking guy. And I tracked his entire fucking career. Of course, I haven't seen every little fucking single thing he's ever done, but I've seen a fuck ton of it. And, you know, for all of the, like, matches with Giant Gonzalez and King Kong Bundy, which I think he would even tell you weren't really that good, he has had some incredible fucking matches, incredible fucking storylines, and again, that dark presentation of that amazing character, to me, was like, I attribute my love for the Undertaker character as a big catalyst for me getting into horror movies. You know, obviously, I got to the point where I would, you know, as a kid, I would track down everything I could as far as wrestling is concerned. My brothers, like I said, had all those VHS tapes of wrestling, WWF, WCW, fucking watched everything. I watched every single little thing I could from them. We'd go to Family Video as a Midwestern video rental company. Rest in peace. Fucking bummer. But I would rent all the wrestling tapes that they had. All of them. And so I would eventually see stuff like the Ministry Undertaker and all that fucking dark cult shit he was doing, and even before that when he kind of went more into the goth way of things. And I'd say like the Taker look from like 97 to 98 is my definitive look for the Undertaker. I just think he looks fucking great at that time. As far as the costumes and all that, he was just on another fucking level to me. But that being said, I would end up seeing stuff like the Ministry of Darkness and all of that. And yeah, man, he was a big catalyst for me getting in the horror movies and just seeing how scary he was and noticing that that type of stuff really appealed to me. That being said, like I said, I would track down wrestling tapes from all companies, or what I could find. I didn't have access. I wasn't tape trading when I was fucking 5, so it was mostly restricted to like WCW and WWF. And I grew to love a lot of different guys. Mainly, I'd say when I was a kid, if Undertaker's 1A, Kane was 1B. Kane was like right fucking here. Absolutely adored Kane. One of the tapes that I would always rent from Family Video. So much so to the point where the guy at the front desk who I saw every weekend, my dad would take me up there. I rented that same fucking tape every single weekend. And this dude, I would rent that one and like another one. And he was like, do you just want to buy this, dude? Like, that's my dad. He's like, do you just want to buy this for him? Because like, he's the only one who fucking rents this goddamn thing. And my dad's like, yeah, sure. So he bought me the tape. It was No Way Out in 1998. And Kane had a match with Vader. And, Kane's the bad guy or the heel. And, as a fan, you're not supposed to like Kane. And I fucking loved Kane. So after the match, he busts fucking Vader's face in with a wrench. And the commentators are like, oh, you son of a bitch. Shout out to JR. I was just like, fuck yeah, dude. Fuck Vader. Shout out to Vader. Rest in peace. I fucking love Vader, but at the time, fuck him. But no, I love Kane. And another guy who really, really appealed to me was Stone Cold Steve Austin. I think every kid in the world at that time just adored Stone Cold, the beer swilling, finger raising. I have a funny story about this in a second. Finger raising, boss stunning, bald redneck motherfucker. Like, who will just kick anybody's ass. Stone Cold was so cool because if you look at him, there's not a whole lot about him visually that you'd be like stunned by. It's all about the character and the presentation of his actions in the ring and what he would say on the microphone. He was 100% like attitude. He's a big reason why his time period is called the Attitude Era. A huge reason for that is Stone Cold Steve Austin. He was fucking awesome, dude. There's a reason a lot of people consider him to be the best of all time or their favorite. And if anytime someone says, yeah, Stone Cold's my favorite of all time, I'm like, yeah, I totally understand that. It's not for me personally that'll always be The Undertaker, but fuck, man, like Stone Cold just fucking rules. Let's tell a story about the middle finger real quick. So, here's this guy who's like anti-establishment and he's flipping off his boss, Vince McMahon. And yeah, I just thought he was the coolest fucking guy in the world. So I see he's doing this. And he's getting up on the turnbuckles, on the ropes, and he's doing this. I'm like a little fucking kid. And so I knew it was bad. Because he would do it to people on TV and they would react like, they get all big mad or irritated, or like the fans would all pop, which usually meant they were doing something not good. So I was like, okay, clearly that finger is bad for whatever reason. And I think even it might have been explained to me at one point that it meant, hey, fuck you. But it didn't stop me from doing it when I thought no one was looking at school or at home. And sure enough, I got caught. I can't remember if it was if it was at home or at school. I don't know if a teacher called my mom or anything like that, which was funny. Anytime I got God damn. Woo! Anytime I got in trouble at school, I was, I didn't give a shit if I got like in trouble or I had to stay in for recess for fuck it, I don't care. I'll just draw or do something else. But they were like, "Oh, I'm gonna call your mom." I'm like, "You're fucking please don't call my mom." Like, I was like, that was the worst fucking thing to me. But yeah, either that happened or my brother caught me doing it to him or something. But someone caught me doing this, and so my mom, I got in trouble. I got in some pretty serious shit. And yeah, I would like to say I didn't do it anymore, but I just was extra safe to make sure no one saw. But yeah, Stone Cold was super influential on me as a kid, for better or for worse. But yeah, seriously, one of the best of all time. Mick Foley is another guy who, I always knew wrestling was a work as a kid. I think it was explained to me very early on, like, this isn't real. This is a TV show. These are, whatever you want to call them, performers, actors. They're professional wrestlers. That's the only real descriptor you can say of them. Mick Foley was the one guy who I always watched, and I always really enjoyed. I think back to stuff like his match with, I remember seeing his match with Triple H on Raw. It was a Falls Count Anywhere. Like, basically, for those who are watching who aren't avid pro wrestling fans, basically, like, fight anywhere in the arena you want. And I remember that being fucking amazing, and his matches with Stone Cold. But there was something about Mick Foley that always stuck out to me. And this is before I really knew about, him being the king of the death match in IWA Japan and all this crazy shit that he did with barbed wire and dynamite and nails and thumbtacks and all this crazy shit. I knew he was hardcore. I had seen the Hell in a Cell and all that, but like he got fucking down, dude. But there was one thing about him that always really compelled me, and that was like, there's no way what he is doing right now does not hurt. There were other guys, and I knew it was all a work, but, like, there were, it was, and now, being older, I realize that a lot of them get hurt nightly. Not seriously hurt, thankfully, but, it all hurts. You're landing on a fucking thin mat with board and all that. But there was something about Mick Foley that he would just go above and beyond. He would crack his head on concrete and take open chair shots right to the head, which a lot of guys did back then. You should not fucking do that. I'll tell a little story about a headshot of my own here later on. But, but yeah, man, Mick Foley was one of those guys who just, to me, I always appreciated because he went above and beyond and really, really, really just went for it. And I always really loved that about him. And yeah, he's one of my favorites of all time because of it. And yeah, dude, those are some of my childhood favorites that really, really stuck with me. And like I said before with the Austin thing, I was a very impressionable young man, and professional wrestling in general really, really influenced me in more ways than one, as we are about to see. Ah, yes, you read that right. The Backyard. Chapter 3. Let's fucking do this. Let's talk about backyard wrestling. So, obviously, when you're a kid and you're watching pro wrestling, you're like, man, wouldn't it be cool to do this? It's not a fucking good idea. Don't do it. I can tell you right now, do not backyard wrestle. If you want to pursue your dreams, fucking go for it. Go out, pay for wrestling school, get trained properly, and then become a wrestler. Don't do what I did. And what I did was, I was a young child, as my brothers were as well. Teenagers probably at that time. And we would wrestle in my backyard, or in the living room, or in the basement, or in my bedroom, or whatever. And, you know, I have some really, really fun memories with it, dude. I have some fucking great memories wrestling my brothers. It was some of the funnest fucking times. It was cool because I was a really, really small kid. So they were older and bigger than me. So I was always the one taking this crazy fucking power bombs and suplexes because I was easy to lift. They could lift each other up. I've seen them do it, but it would always like fucking, like, it would always like kind of fight it a little bit to like, you know, make sure they got them up above their head or whatever. But with me, they were just like, whoop, and fucking did whatever they needed to do. So that was fun, kind of being the rag doll, as weird as that sounds, but it was cool. And eventually I started learning I started learning how to do like Hurricane Ranas and shit like that, and I was doing swanton bombs off my fucking couch, which I got yelled at constantly and just never stopped until I probably fucking hurt myself or something. And I eventually stopped. Either that or I got too fucking big. But yeah, man, that was some really, really fucking fun times. I have distinct memories of having Royal Rumbles in the living room, and we had a couch that was not like, the back of it wasn't against a wall. And so the top of the couch, oh, that's the top rope. And me and my brothers, and sometimes it would become a shoot. Again, for no one who's an avid wrestling fan, shoot means real. So shoot means, all right, we're not playing anymore. Like, we're really trying to fucking, like, get each other over this couch. And it would be, like, 30 fucking minutes of, like, trying to fucking push each other off. It was fucking fun, man. It was good times. But yeah, dude, that was always fun. But with the fun times comes injuries, and thankfully, you know, I never broke any bones. My brothers were never stupid with me, lifting me up. They didn't do anything they thought they couldn't do or nothing like that. They weren't, you know, as far as backyard wrestling is concerned, we did it about as safe as you could do it. So I guess that's a good thing. You know, this shit does happen though. The biggest ones was my brother had me up in a gorilla press, and he's gonna fucking know what I'm talking about as soon as I do this. So he has me up again. I'm a little kid, so I'm fairly easy to lift. So he has me up in this gorilla press, and I'm just laying there. I'm on my stomach's facing the ceiling. And for some stupid fucking reason, I squirmed. I squirmed like a little shit. And he just fucking drops me. And he drops me on this mattress that we're like wrestling, and that's where he would slam me or I would slam him. And and yeah, that's where we took the bumps. And so he just dropped me, and thankfully he dropped me in front of him where the mattress was. It would have been a lot worse if he dropped me behind him. But he drops me, and when I hit the mattress, I land on my back. I don't land on my head or anything like that. But the velocity at which I did this, I land, and then my body just folds like a taco. And I land, and I fold, and my knee comes up and just boom, bashes me right in my fucking eye. Get a nice shiner from it. Gnarly shit. Our parents weren't home, and as soon as my dad got home, I tried to like stick up for him and lie, and I was a little fucking kid, so I was a horrible liar. And as soon as he walks in the door, I was just like, I fell. And my dad's just looking at me, and he looks at my brother, and my brother just goes, he didn't fall. It was good shit, man. My other brother powerbombed me on the back of my head once on the fucking carpet. He just fucking powerbombed me, and I think the idea was he was gonna like walk over to the couch and do it, but I don't know what happened, but he just fucking, I went down, and I fucking cracked my head on the floor. I didn't bleed. I didn't get a concussion, anything crazy like that. I guess I just had a fucking, a thick skull, and it hurt, but I was fine. But I look back at that now, and I'm like, I think maybe that's why I talk. That's why I say the wrong refrigerators sometimes. I mean sentences. No, I'm playing, but I do look back at that. And I'm like, holy fuck! Like that could have been really bad. But yeah, man, backyard wrestling just goes to show that pro wrestling has influenced me uh, on and off the television screen. So I just kind of wanted to share some of that stuff here. And yeah, man, let's go ahead and go into chapter 4, and I will lead into it with this. Obviously, childhood was a lot of it revolved around pro wrestling and eventually horror movies and stuff like that. But as I grew older, I got access to the internet. All right, so let's hop right into it right here. So, the internet. To me, one of the best and one of the worst things to ever happen to professional wrestling. And what I mean by that is this. On the positive side of things, it gave people and gave me access to a shit ton more of professional wrestling than I was used to. Before the internet, or really me having steady access to the internet, it was just WWF, WCW, and that's really it. And then, come the internet, as I get older, I start to learn, and we'll go into it here, but I start to learn more about independent wrestling, and I start to learn more about, Japanese wrestling and deathmatch wrestling and all this crazy shit that I never seen before. And it was just really cool to take in all this different content that I never knew. I knew it existed and stuff like that. When I would hear it referenced, and on WCW they would have Japanese stars come over every once in a while, and even in WWF they did it sometimes. So, I knew this stuff existed, but now I get to see it. And it was so fucking cool. And, I love the fact that, if not for the internet and YouTube and all that other shit, I never would have gotten to see that stuff. Or it would have been much more slim. So, that's the good side of things. But unfortunately, with the good come the bad. I think the internet has bred a lot of toxicity within the pro wrestling fandom. And, the wrestling business itself has always not been the best. It's had its dark periods. It has a whole television show named Dark Side of the Ring after it, for God's sake. But I feel like the internet really exposed... I'm not going to say exposed the business. Well, that's a whole nother topic of conversation, but it really kind of... You see the worst of people on the internet, unfortunately, and a lot of people with a lot of overqualified opinions will see something that you like and you enjoy, and if you have the gall to say, hey, let's take this for instance. Me personally, this is just my opinion, never really cared for WCW all that much. I like certain parts of it. The cruiserweights were fucking awesome. The NWO was rad. And I loved Sting and DDP. And there's definitely stuff about WCW that I think was really cool. But overall, I'm just not into it. There's just something about it that I do not enjoy. That being said, there are people who fucking love WCW and loved that company, were wrecked when it got shut down and bought out and all that stuff that happened with Turner and all that shit. And yeah, man, people loved WCW, and they would tune in every Monday night as a kid, and they have great memories with it. So if I see someone on the internet and they say, I love WCW, I think it's the best professional wrestling to ever grace television screens, or whatever they want to say, do I agree with them? Fuck no. No, I don't at all, by any stretch. I don't. am I going to get on my fucking keyboard and start saying, you're a fake fan, you don't know what you're talking about, clearly you're not knowledgeable on the business, you know, and all that stupid shit? No, I'm not gonna fucking do that, because I'm not a dick. And that's one thing, you know, having fans be toxic with each other is nothing new. You know, we see it in Star Wars, and it does rear its ugly head in horror as well, but thankfully with the horror community, not nearly as much. You know, the horror community is overall really, really cool. You'll get, you know, dickheads every once in a while, but from what I've seen in my time as a horror fan, which is almost equal to my time as a wrestling fan, give or take a couple, 5 or 6 years, it's always been awesome. So props to them for that. I cannot say the same thing about wrestling, unfortunately, but it's one thing for fans to do that. But then you get people who are actually have either been in the business and are out of it now, or people who are active in the business being complete fucking morons and ignorant assholes. And I'm not talking about, you know, we could get into wrestlers' personal lives and people who haven't made the best decisions and are dirtbags and all that stuff. We're not going to do that here. That's one thing. But for a guy like, let's, you know, we'll go with a popular example. Let's go with Jim Cornette. Jim Cornette is a guy who has been in the wrestling business for a very long time, is super fucking knowledgeable about wrestling, was running his own company for a while, Smoky Mountain Wrestling, has been a part of WWF, part of TNA, part of Ring of Honor, and he's been around the block multiple times, part of the NWA. He's been around the block numerous times when it comes to professional wrestling. There's no doubt about that at all. And he has a great fucking mind for pro wrestling. The thing that he does not understand, and I'll say this, Jim Cornette's really smart, but he doesn't know everything. And he's a guy who thinks wrestling needs to be one thing, and that's it. That's all it can be. That's all wrestling should ever be, is one little fucking pocket of this huge world that wrestling is. And to him, wrestling should stick to the old school, you know, within reason, obviously, but that old school mentality and that old, you know, that down south, southern style pro wrestling, you know? And that's just not, obviously, you know, I dig that stuff. I'm not going to sit here and badmouth old school wrestling. Like, if we didn't have that, we wouldn't be where we are today. I think if you do something like that well, you know, you look at NWA Power and how fucking awesome that show was for while it was cool. It's not so much anymore. But, you know, that was a really old school presentation in a modern time, and it fucking works. However, I mean, shit, Jim Cornette worked with them for a while. However, that's not all wrestling has to be. That's not the only way to do this. My favorite match of all time that we'll get into is not a Jim Cornette match. I don't know how he feels about the match. I really don't give a shit, you know, how he feels about it, to be honest, or really anybody for that matter. If it's my favorite match, if I think Kenny Omega versus that 9-year-old girl in Japan is my favorite match of all time, it's my fucking favorite match. Go fuck yourself. It's not, even though I find that match to be super entertaining. If you haven't seen that, please look it up. It is a sight to behold. It is a legit 9-year-old girl who I think is still wrestling to this day, if I'm not mistaken, but she was a 9-year-old trainee in a professional wrestling dojo in Japan. And her and Kenny Omega went out and had a fucking pretty cool little match. Like, it was fucking impressive. It was really fun. And a guy, you know, not just Jim Cornette, but guys like Jim Cornette will go on their podcasts or whatever and say, this was bullshit, this was a disgrace to the wrestling business, and all this stupid shit. And it's like, dude, you're not, if that's not your thing, fine, whatever, don't watch it, but don't try to make other people feel stupid for enjoying it. It's just, it does the wrestling business no good. It does nobody any good. I can say the same thing about Star Wars. If you didn't like the sequels, fine, but don't go out of your way to make people feel stupid for liking them. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Anytime I review a horror movie on this channel, I'm not going to say, like, I just reviewed Texas 2, for instance, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. There are parts of that movie that I really fucking enjoy, and there's other parts of the movie that I really fucking don't like. If you think that Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 is better than the original and it's the best entry in the franchise for whatever reason you have for it, do I agree with you? Fuck no. Absolutely not. But at the same time, I'm not going to sit here and be like, you're a fake fucking fan and you don't know what you're talking about. Because then what kind of fan would I be? I'd be a fucking dick. That's what I would be. So, you know, I see a lot of that on the internet, and it's just not fucking cool. But we will leave that where it lies. I've already talked about it enough. Like I said before, the internet did a lot of good for me, though, with wrestling. And one of the things that it did was I discovered Ring of Honor. And, you know, to this day, I don't know how I feel about Ring of Honor nowadays. It's just, it is what it is. That's damn sure not what it used to be. But, you know, I was already watching a little bit of TNA as well, which was, you know, also not what it used to be. But TNA, like Impact as they're called now, it's pretty cool. Again, you know, it's pretty rad. I like what they're doing. But I was watching TNA, and then I got into Ring of Honor. And I start to discover guys, you know, who are getting, you know, I see guys on WWE TV like a Daniel Bryan or a CM Punk, or over on TNA I see Samoa Joe, and I see AJ Styles, and I see Nigel McGuinness, or as he was known in TNA, Desmond Wolfe, and all these fucking awesome wrestlers. And I'm like, where the fuck did these guys come from? And, you know, and that's how I really got into Ring of Honor. And I fucking adore Ring of Honor. I mean, they're not what they used to be for whatever reason. I'm really hoping we can get back to that in some shape or form. With AEW owning them now, I imagine it would be more of a developmental thing, but whatever. Point I'm trying to make is Ring of Honor is really fucking cool. That's how I really got to appreciate guys like a CM Punk, like a Samoa Joe, Chris Hero, Claudio Castagnoli. I just really fucking got into those guys. They would play on my local cable, like, it was like a local cable channel or something, and I would watch their weekly television, and I just thought the world of that company, man. I thought they were really fucking cool. And another thing that they kind of did was they exposed me to Japanese wrestling. I would watch matches like, you know, Samoa Joe's this world beater, and he went on a 2-year reign with the Ring of Honor title, and, like, this dude's fucking great. And then I see him go up against a guy like Kenta Kobashi, and I'm like, who is this fucking guy? You know? And I start to discover Japanese pro wrestling through that, and I start YouTubing just different Japanese shit, and I discover, you know, Kenta Kobashi, Kenta, Mitsuharu Musawa. And then I discovered New Japan Pro Wrestling with guys like Liger, who I was already pretty familiar with, but by this point we're in like 2011, 12, 13, around there, and I'm hearing about guys like Hiroshi Tanahashi, Shinsuke Nakamura, Kazuchika Okada, Minoru Suzuki, and just all of these fucking great Japanese wrestlers, and I would watch what I could of them. And New Japan is especially just stole my fucking heart, man. They were doing stuff that just Western companies just weren't doing, you know? They made it feel like more of a sport in the way they presented it. I fucking fell in love with New Japan. I really didn't have steady access to them as much as I would have liked until around Wrestle Kingdom 11. And just kind of finding any way to watch them that I could. And yeah, man, it was fucking rad to really see that those guys really kind of make me fall back in love with professional wrestling. I had always liked wrestling before that. I'm gonna put my belt down now because it's getting kind of annoying holding it. But it was really cool to kind of fall back in love with wrestling, you know. But yeah, man, without further ado, I think it's time to wrap this up and get to the sentimental chapter, if you will. Let's get right to it. So we sit here today in 2022, having gone through a pandemic and all this crazy shit, and we look at where wrestling is today. And to say the least, it is in a much different spot than when I left, or not when I left it. It is in a much different spot from where I started watching wrestling. We have WWE still. That'll just never fucking change. They're a global fucking empire now. It's just never going to go away. Nor do I want it to. I don't want WWE to die or anything like that. That being said, it's getting better. You know, Triple H has taken over, and he's taken over for the old man, Vince, who those last couple of years he was in charge, shit was getting really, really rough to sit through, and I hadn't sat down and watched a Raw since probably 2016, I'd say. Like, it's been a long time. But yeah, man. So stuff's looking up, but it doesn't hit the same like it used to. I really enjoy AEW. I think there's stuff that they could improve on, mostly the women's division. I feel like they do not give those girls enough time at fucking all. And it sucks because they have a stacked women's roster, and they have 2 titles, and they're in the women's division itself, and they're just not fucking doing anything with people, and it sucks. It really does suck. But other than that, I really enjoy AEW. Obviously, I got the Kenny Omega AEW shirt, which I obviously love all the stuff he's doing. Loved that they brought back CM Punk. CM Punk's one of my favorite fucking wrestlers of all time. Kind of sucks how that turned out, but hey, it was cool while we had him. And yeah, dude, like, I think wrestling is in a really fucking good state right now. I think things are improving where they at first really weren't so good. And the things that were already good about it are only getting better. So wrestling is in a really good spot right now. I don't have all the time in the world to watch it like I used to. I just, like I said, horror is the top dog as far as my priorities with entertainment. And obviously with the YouTube channel and all my commitments here. That being said, wrestling is still extremely important to me. I keep up with it religiously, however I can, mostly social media. But yeah, man, it's still something that's super fucking important to me. And that brings me to the last thing I want to say with this video that I'm sure is going to be incredibly long after I get done editing it. Again, if you're still here, wrestling fan or not, genuinely, thank you. I know people probably saw the title. Some people probably saw this title. And I know no member of the DoD family is going to say this because we don't welcome dickheads here. But I know people will react this way when someone says I'm a pro wrestling fan. Oh, you know it's fake, right? It's a fucking meme at this point. It's a joke. Oh, you know it's fake. It's like, nah, man. I thought the fucking show with the dead guy tombstone pile driving people on their fucking heads was real. It's like, what the fuck, man? Really? Like, of course, any movie you watch, any television show you watch is gonna be fucking fake. Whatever that means. It's like, dude, it's a show. It's entertainment. It's not meant to be taken seriously in a certain regard. It's not meant to be taken seriously. It's fun, man. Horror movies aren't fucking real. Hate to break it to you, Michael Myers isn't fucking real. Someone gets shot seven times. Halloween 2, shout out. If someone gets shot 6 times, it's a good fucking chance they ain't getting up. Especially not getting up and going to a hospital and killing a bunch of people afterwards. But yeah, not real. No horror movie is real. No movie is real. That's a moot fucking argument in my point. It doesn't matter. But I've discovered something in my own head that I really think even disregards that argument even further than, what I just said. And that's this. And you can really apply this to anything. If you're able to sit down and escape the real world for a while. Say you're having a bad day. You know, day's not going the way you want it to. And you're able to sit down and watch something and take something in and just forget about everything. Whether that's wrestling, a horror movie, any movie, a crime show, or fuck, take the TV out of it. If you're able to go on a walk, plug your headphones in and forget about the world. If it's sitting down on the porch with your significant other of however many years and just talking. To me, if that's what makes you happy, it doesn't fucking matter what anybody says. It'll never matter. If it's special, it's special. That's what horror movies are to me. That's what spending the time with my family that I'm about to with Thanksgiving is going to be. That's what pro wrestling is to me, man. It's special. And it's real. Alright, guys, without further ado, thank you so much for sticking by. I'm sure this video is going to be much longer than I anticipated. But hey, that's what it's all about sometimes, right? But yeah, guys, thank you as always for showing support. And without further ado, take care of each other. Keep watching horror. Maybe give pro wrestling a try. And have a good rest of your fucking day.
Let's show us all day, babe.
Hang in here for these guys.
By dawn, Dad has survived another 36 hours of removing potholes. The bucket tie gives him a shot at the rail.